It looks like we're slowing down into the room so we can get started. Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the third workshop in our series on emergency and first responders partnerships. Today we'll be discussing post-crisis support. I'm Megan McGregor, and I will be leading us into this session today. So before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with the technology that we'll be using today in the webinar. So as you will see, closed captioning is enabled for today's webinar. We also have American Sign Language capabilities enabled in this meeting. You can activate it by clicking the interpretation icon on your Zoom navigation bar. If you need tech support during today's webinar, please send a chat message to the hosts and they'll address it for you as quickly as possible. And finally, if you have questions during the presentation, please enter them into the Q&A area. These questions will be sent directly to the presenters and moderators for us to address during the Q&A session. I want to note that we will have two presentations today, so we will be holding our questions until the end of both presentations. Next slide. I would like to note that the views expressed in written conference materials or publications and by speakers and moderators do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and SAMHSA, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial practices, or organizations imply endorsements by the U.S. government. Today's webinar is hosted by SAMHSA's 988 Crisis Systems Response TTAC. SAMHSA has selected Altarum to provide training and technical assistance support to states, territories, tribal organizations, and community partners across the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline and Crisis Continuum of Care. Along with our partners, W2 Consulting Corporation and Change Matrix LLC, both of whom have extensive experience with crisis services and technical assistance, the TTAC was formed to support the continued growth of the 988 Lifeline and build a more robust crisis care system. The goal of the Crisis Systems Response TTAC is to support a crisis care system that is integrated, sustainable, and aligned with evidence-based and evidence-informed practices. We'll be dropping in the chat for you in just a minute a link to some more of our TA services in case you're interested. Next slide. I'd like to acknowledge our SAMHSA partners who make this presentation possible. The first is Ms. Jill Mays, who's the Division Director of Crisis Systems Transformation for the 988 and Behavioral Health Crisis Coordinating Office. And Ms. Tiffany Russell, the Chief of Crisis and Justice Initiatives. And Tiffany is joining us today. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Russell, and I am the Chief of Crisis and Justice Initiatives. And so this learning collaborative is particularly close to my heart as we are talking about emergency and first responder partnerships. I just wanted to pop in and thank everyone that has shown up over the past several sessions. Thank you for all of the hard work that you're doing in your cohort, in your work groups, the planning that has been taking place, all of the folks that have joined us to give background information about their programs and provided some real boots on the ground experience and feedback for you all to take back to your respective communities. I hope that everything that you have learned thus far has been helpful in what you're trying to accomplish in your communities. I hope that you know we here at SAMHSA are behind you and supporting you in all of the work that you're doing. And I definitely hope that you are taking full advantage of all of the experience from the professionals within our TTAC, and that you're reaching out to them outside of these sessions, that you are also using our resources, our written resources, our other webinars, and other visual materials that we have provided, not just recently, but throughout the last two years as well. We've done a lot of work around crisis support and crisis systems as it relates to working directly with 988, 911, fire departments, police departments, ambulance services. And so we really want you to take full advantage of all of those things. And if there's anything else that we can support you with, other resources that you see are necessary and needed, please reach out and let us know that as well. I'll continue to check in as we advance through this series. And I really am interested in looking forward to what we have to come at the end, where we learn more about your plans to move forward as well. So thank you again for all of your hard work and for showing up for your communities.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. If you stay tuned to the end of this session, we'll have more information on where you can access some of those previous webinars that Tiffany mentioned. I also want to make sure to acknowledge our work stream here that does all of the background work to get these presentations off the ground. Stephanie B., Chizoba, Jasmine, Stephanie Liu, Manny, Liz, and myself make up this work stream team. Next slide. So today we'll review our learning objectives. We'll talk a little bit about follow-up care as a best practice. We'll have presentations from 2 guest speakers, and then we'll have time for a robust question and answer period at the end. So by the end of the workshop today, participants will be able to describe the role of emergency and first responders in post-crisis engagement. They'll identify challenges and facilitators to sustaining post-crisis collaboration across sectors, and apply practical strategies to strengthen cross-system collaboration that builds community resilience. Next slide. You likely all know that we have the 3 pillars of crisis care: someone to contact, someone to respond, and a safe place for help. And now we want to introduce the potential 4th pillar of follow-up. Now, while this could stand on its own, we also want to acknowledge that follow-up care should be embedded into each of the 3 pillars of crisis care, being able to provide that follow-on support for individuals in crisis who reach out for help. This means that we're not siloing follow-up care to one specific agency, organization, or group of responders. We all have a role to play in follow-up care. And today, as we hear from our guest speakers, we'll learn a little bit how our systems and our first responders can help to support a follow-up care system that is comprehensive and ingrained into our crisis care system. Next slide. So our first speaker today is Emily Anderson. She is the manager of co-responder services for Colorado's Behavioral Health Administration. And prior to that, she's worked in a variety of settings with justice-involved populations with behavioral health needs. She's been a collaborative partner and course director for a regional CIT training program and a principal partner in development, implementation, and supervision of co-responder programs in 3 separate law enforcement agencies. Welcome, Emily. We're so glad to have you today.
Thank you. So happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me. Please bear with me. My voice is not at peak today, but we will power through. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So today I have 2 sections that I'm going to kind of go over. The first one is just how we do things in Colorado, some of the general program structure and framework for our co-responder programs. I'm not going to get too deep into any of the slides. I just want it as some foundational information for you all. And I'm coming at this from a statewide lens, so much more high level, a bit more on the conceptual and philosophical lens that I'm bringing today. And so I really just want to touch on the ways throughout the general program structure and framework, the ways that law enforcement and first responders play a critical role of the overall success of programs. And you will have access, I believe, to the slides afterwards, so you can look at them later as well. Next slide. So this is kind of an overall just blueprint of what our framework looks like. I don't know that, so as I go through the program structure, I don't know that any of it is particularly unique to Colorado, but I think there's some nuggets in there that really speak to the post-crisis follow-up. I think all of these elements are important for each team member between the model and the structure, what you're actually doing on scene, and of course, post-crisis, some other elements, but it's all really built on that foundation of collaboration and relationship building. And when I move into the second section, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that piece, that foundational piece, but it's really woven through everything. Next slide. So these are the program goals. Again, I don't know that these particular goals are unique to Colorado necessarily, but I really wanted to highlight on this the coordinated system-wide approach. These elements, the system-wide approach is baked into everything, and from the state level, very much encouraged and supported. And I think it can be very easy if you are, boots on the ground, if you're responding day in and day out, I think it can be easy to lose focus of that or to feel like that aspect is the responsibility of leadership or of management. And so I just want uh, to focus on the fact that you have a very clear role in that coordinated system-wide approach. And I encourage everybody to keep in mind this kind of bigger project as you move through your community and as your program is built and as it develops over time, as you iterate within your program, that we've got a very special opportunity with these programs to build that system-wide change and approach. Next slide. So these are the different response models that we use in Colorado. Um, it's really based on what the agency needs. At the state level, we don't dictate what is going to make the most sense for any individual community. I do think, though, that with the primary response models, I think those lend themselves better to having a clearer idea of law enforcement and first responders' roles in post-crisis response. I think it's easier when you're dedicated, your whole role is behavioral health and crisis response. It's easier to see yourself in that role, but that isn't necessarily to say one is better than the other necessarily. I'm not making judgments on that. It's really about what's best for any given community. Next slide. And these are the team structures, some different elements that are built into the structure. I always say once you've seen one program, you've seen one program. At the state, we've provided a lot of latitude for creativity and really meeting the community where it's at and trying to figure out what's going to work best. So I think that last bullet is really the important piece of this, is that thinking about how you build programs, thinking about how you staff them, how it's structured, thinking of it in terms of decisions have trade-offs versus kind of forcing everything into a false binary of better, worse, right, or wrong. I think it really depends on where you're at and what makes sense. And you can always evolve over time. These programs tend to be iterative, right? So it will change. There will be different opportunities that come up. And in Colorado, for sure, programs are really built based upon the community needs, what the resources are, the culture within agencies, comfort levels. There's all sorts of things that are baked into that decision. One of the main themes that I will be imparting today is be creative. Try to be as creative as you can. Next slide. So, of course, this is not by any means a comprehensive list of the types of responses and the roles that the team plays. Um, it's very generalized. There's a lot of nuance missed here, but um, I think, again, trying not to think too narrowly about what that post-crisis response looks like, remembering that we all live within systems, we're all system actors, and the individuals that you serve every day live within the larger context of their environment. We all wear a lot of hats, and so just trying to avoid and missing that pitfall of thinking a little too narrowly about what your role is and about where you can really make an impact. I think there's a vast latitude that you can really affect change within your community. Next slide. So other program elements, of course, I don't think I need to get too much into the fact that policies are really important. Um, Institutionalizing the program, making sure it's not about the people doing the work, it's about the program itself, that it is built in and baked into the fabric of what we do every day, and also helping to define some of those roles through policies and procedures. One of the most important things I think to keep in mind and to really think about is we're intentionally bringing together two professions that historically haven't worked closely together, and we've got different viewpoints, we've got different experiences. We Each side brings a lot to the table, and so really working to create good team culture and norms, and creating a psychologically safe culture where a team can speak up and present ideas and talk about things without the fear of, punishment or ridicule or um, retribution, right? Being open to all of the great ideas that everybody brings to the team. And also not allowing the program culture, the team culture to be ruled by one profession or the other, to really make it a space where you're really blending those two cultures. That's really the specialness of these programs. And then that last piece, the training and communication, both internally and externally, formal and informal. There are a lot of great opportunities to build relationships, to get the word out, um, to collaborate both formally and informally, and keeping that in mind as a really important tool that you have in your tool belt, to work collaboratively within your community and to serve the individuals in your community that you're serving. Next slide. And then for the sake of time, I'm not going to get too deep into this slide, but I do want to say that, when Colorado in 2018, when we were kind of building this statewide program, we intentionally built in these different levels of collaborative structures. And there are some collaborative groups that have kind of built themselves organically too. So this is really baked into every aspect, every part of the program throughout the state. And keep this in mind, these different levels of collaboration, these different opportunities for collaboration. As I go through the next section, keep these in mind on how these structures at different levels can be used to meet your needs, to meet your program's needs. Next slide. Excuse me. So this this is the last section. I have a few slides here, really talking about what does that collaboration for post-crisis response look like. And again, it's hard to speak from where I sit. It's hard to speak about a lot of the detailed pieces because people are here from all over the country. We've got variation between laws and policies, service availability, structures. There's so much variability. I will be, again, talking much more conceptual, a little less instructive. And my hope really is that you walk away with a different perspective and that you walk away with some different ways of thinking about your role and ways of seeing yourself in that role and how you move forward and really get creative. Next slide. So this is, I don't know if anybody else has a favorite definition of collaboration, but I certainly do. And this is it. This is from a 2019 paper research out of Australia, where they identified 30 different domains that are involved in multidisciplinary collaboration. And out of that came this working definition. It's a really great paper, actually. I think it still holds up. It's really interesting. Highly recommended. But their working definition is collaboration is the interactions of interconnected and interdependent agents who work together towards a common purpose that they could not have achieved alone. And I think this is a very powerful definition. And I know when we hear the same word over and over, it starts to kind of lose meaning. So hopefully this can kind of be a North Star definition of what it means truly to collaborate. That if we could have done all of this alone, we would have fixed things a long time ago. Next slide. This is absolutely my favorite part of these programs. It's that space in the middle. It's where these professions that generally haven't worked together closely in such a manner where they come together, that middle space truly is the secret sauce of these programs. I've heard it likened to an arranged marriage, which I don't think is inaccurate. And remembering that you are interdependent, we are bringing you together so that each side has something to contribute. Each side can work towards that common goal. And thinking about it, you're learning a new language. Each behavioral health, law enforcement, first responders, you're learning each other's language. You're learning new ways to look at the world. You're learning at new ways of looking at how you respond, and you're learning how each other's system works. Um, and you have an amazing opportunity, an amazing perspective to see where there are gaps in the system, see where there are fissures, see where holes can be plugged, so to speak. And that is an amazing opportunity that I hope everybody can truly appreciate, that opportunity to make those larger impacts while also making a definite impact on the individuals that you're serving. And it truly is. And this is part of why I said earlier that it's important that neither profession kind of takes over the team culture, that it really is both. There has to be that middle space. Next slide. And I would be remiss if I said that it's always all rainbows and sunshine, because of course we're bringing people are going to people. Um, and really that there can be this tension in the middle if you're knocked out of your comfort zone and you're knocking two professions kind of at least slightly out of their comfort zone. So this, I think, is absolutely an opportunity to take advantage of being uncomfortable and taking advantage of that ambiguity that you find yourself in being in this role. It's a good opportunity to see things differently, to get creative. When we are knocked out of autopilot, we can slow down and really look at what's happening around us and how we can play a larger role in that. And so remembering to, if you hit points of frustration with community partners within your team, however that might happen, remembering to maintain focus on those shared goals and focus on your complementary strengths. There's so many opportunities to play off of each other's strengths in while you're uh, while you're executing an intervention, right? Sometimes people respond better to a law enforcement officer because of the inherent authority figure built into that. That's fantastic. Like, how can you work together as a team to find where that flexibility is to meet the need and to meet the moment? And then, of course, you're coming together as well with your own networks, with your own connections, with your own contacts. And so capitalizing on those disparate contacts and connections. Um, and also, anybody who has ever worked with me has probably heard these two things more times than they would like, which is start with yes and it like an improv person, right? How can you yes and things? And it's and not or. Again, trying not to get stuck in false binaries, that there's enough work to go around. There's enough people to help. So how can we bring together to make that happen in creative ways? Next slide. And there can be some pitfalls. And in the, gosh, almost 15 years I've kind of been working in and around this field, there's some pitfalls that I have noticed over time and some pieces that I think is is really important to keep in mind as you move through. Um, Politeness is truly the poison of collaboration, and I don't say that to say be mean by any means, but being overly polite, while it has the best intentions, often doesn't serve the collaboration and doesn't serve the community. And so, really remembering that conflict isn't bad, it's how you do it, it's how you engage, and keeping that in mind as you move through, that it's better to tackle issues that come up when they do so that resentment and other pitfalls don't really build up and bubble over. Um, Also, I just want to say between this slide and the next two slides, I struggled on the organization of them, so bear with me here. Um, as you're building your team, as you're building your community partnerships, as you're building your resources and your resource network, um, remember that having I've seen pitfalls. I've got some cautionary tales. I have seen collaborations within teams and with community providers kind of die a slow death due to this politeness and due to this uh, due to not wanting to be in conflict or because of conflict avoidance. It's all in service of the relationship, but it can be a huge pitfall. Um, Keeping in mind what those desired outcomes are, keeping in mind that desired or shared end goal, and sometimes having to admit mistakes, sometimes having to course correct, um, learning the lessons as you go along, because not everything is going to be perfect. And of course, holding your community collaborators, holding each other accountable is so important. Um, and of course, as always, try to understand, be curious, be open when you have questions. Um, be curious of your partner, of why they're doing what they're doing and how they do it, and what's the reason behind that. As you dig through those things, I think more and more you'll be able to see how your role is so important in every aspect of the team. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Um, I don't know if anybody is familiar with these concepts, these sociological concepts. They're kind of two sides of the same coin, um, and very important in as you move through, as you build partnerships. I think these two concepts can be very helpful to keep in mind. So reciprocity cascade is basically cooperation begets cooperation. We as humans want to cooperate with each other. We as humans want to be reciprocal. If you do something nice for me, I want to do something nice in return. And the the opposite of that is also true. So there's a concept of defection cascade, which is basically, as humans, we don't want to be taken for a sucker, right? We want everything to be fair. And so if we see somebody not being fair, if we see somebody stepping out of the social order, we are more likely to also step out of the social order. And so as you're moving through these relationships, as you're moving through the program, through your community collaborators, just keeping this in mind that sometimes we have to be the one to start the cooperation or the reciprocity cascade and try to keep away from the defection cascade. And my best example of a defection cascade is when you're in traffic, standstill traffic, like on a highway, and you look through your side view mirror, you see that one person who pulls out and drives up the shoulder of the road, and then what do you see after that? Other people pulling out. That is the best explanation that I can think of what a defection cascade looks like. So keeping that in mind as you're building partnerships and building your resource networks. And next slide. So I've got this. This is the second to last one on my end. Um, so building your resource network, like I said before, each profession is coming to the table with their own contacts, their own networks. And so really working on as you're building your program, as you're growing, working on what is that resource network and trying not to be too narrow of what you consider a resource. I think sometimes it can be easy to think the end goal is treatment. And while the end goal is certainly treatment, sometimes we can get tunnel vision and lose track of the fact that there are a lot of other things that people need and other ways that we can build rapport, other ways that we can help somebody to not have a future crisis or to reduce the likelihood of a future crisis. So thinking a bit more broadly in what you think is a resource and how you identify those community resources and not overlooking the small things. Of course, with the caveat of everything, it's going to depend on your availability for funding and um, regulations, all of those things. So of course, staying within that, but not thinking too narrowly. Um, and thinking about the observed behavior versus what maybe that behavior is getting for the person. Um, so I always think of like somebody who's calling 911 a lot but there isn't a clear crisis. What else might be going on? Are they lonely? Are there resources in the community that you can connect them with from that angle? Sometimes taking a roundabout way can be very helpful to put people at ease, especially if they're constantly being told they need treatment and they don't want treatment. So, what are your other ends? Um, and thinking about uh, just, who can you call? Who maybe be able to donate some time or effort to help an individual. Just thinking as broadly as you can about how to meet people's needs. And then next slide. I think this is my last slide. I wanted to leave you with this quote because I think it's a very powerful one and something to keep in mind. So relationships matter. The currency for systemic change was trust, and trust comes through forming healthy working relationships. People, not programs, change people. So how can you, as you move through, really meet people where they are, think creatively, think critically about how you can make an impact person to person. Um, and yeah, so hopefully you're able to walk away with some creative thoughts. Look at everything a little bit differently. And I will kick it back to Megan.
Thank you so much, Emily. So now that we have some of this systems level perspective, we're going to shift gears a little bit and take it to some implementation boots on the ground work. Next slide. Now we have the recently retired Sergeant Emil Alwyn. Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank
Prior to retiring, he was with the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety for over 25 years, specifically working on the Critical Incident Stress Management Team, the Peer Support Team, Crisis Intervention Team, the list goes on and on. He has extensive experience working at that intersection of mental health and substance use, getting that full comprehensive behavioral health perspective. He's also a certified firefighter, a medical first responder, and has served in a true public safety department where they respond to all different types of emergencies. And now he's doing some teaching locally, so he's giving a lot of his skills and wisdom onto that next generation. Welcome, Emil. We're really happy to have you back here at the TTAC.
you. I appreciate it. Um, yeah. So on top of all that, I was bored during retirement. First of all, Emily, great job. I think you hit every point I wanted to hit on. So I think you just did my presentation. Fantastic job. Um, I don't have a lot of PowerPoints. I'm a talker. I'm not really good with PowerPoint in general. But yeah, so I retired from Kalamazoo in December. I spent about a month being extremely bored, lonely, um, really missing um, the the camaraderie, the life, the call-ins, all the good stuff. And so I went through my post-crisis for about a month. I spent a lot of time cleaning my house. My house is immaculate. You're not going to find a speck of dust under anything. So after that, I was offered a position. I was offered a lot of positions. I was very grateful and very thankful to have my career to where I was getting a lot of positions. I've been offered a couple of chief positions, um, in several other departments, teaching as well as working with our community mental health as a law enforcement liaison. But I really wanted to just work part time, so I now work for our community college, who still allows me to be on our Metro SWAT team, negotiator team. So that's making me happy at that point. Um, Come from City Kalamazoo. I was born and raised on the east side of the state of Michigan, downriver area, which is, I'm going to do the hand thing right over here. So, came to Kalamazoo in '97 to go to school. Graduated from Western Michigan University, and national champions last year in hockey. We're going at it again this year. Got a job with Kalamazoo Go Broncos, exactly. Got a job with Kalamazoo City. I did an internship. The excitement was unreal for me. So I applied, got in, and when I was, Kalamazoo is a rough town for as small as it is. Population of 72,000, 73,000. You get about 90,000 with all the college kids between the community college, Western Michigan, and Kalamazoo College. We have a high crime rate. We're in between Detroit and Chicago, so we are a drug hub. 94 runs right through Kalamazoo. I think we're ranked third in the state for violent crimes. And the latest ranking I saw was 41st in the nation per capita for violent crimes. That's under 100,000 population. So we're in the thick of things. And with that, we also have a very high population of people experiencing mental health. So we have also the most amount of resources, which I will dive into in a little bit. If I can get the next slide. So my career, as my friend Stephanie has produced this little slide with the images, I was all about just arresting bad guys. All I cared about was guns and dope and pursuits. If I can get my little short legs running, I was all about it. If I can get into a car and start running, I was all about it. I really didn't focus my first, I would say, 10, 12 years of my career on behavioral health. It was kind of like, we would go to calls at the shelters and, the downtown areas, and we would just push it along. I mean, I hate to even say this, but most of the time it was, we didn't have anything. We didn't know what to do. Our community mental health at the time wasn't working with law enforcement. We didn't have all the resources we do now. So the jail became the biggest mental institution in our community. And we also had the state hospital. So we had the psychiatric state hospital in Kalamazoo. So, and at the time they were taking in people. So we would just be between the jail and the state hospital, which is very unfortunate. And over time, I really learned like how to manage things. So it was right around 2013, 2015, somewhere around there. I used to drive. I went to the fireside, and when I was driving the rigs, I was just really, I was not into it. I didn't really care for the fireside that much. The guys were working their tails off, and I was just constantly seeing it. So I decided to go back to the road. When I went back to the road, I worked our downtown district, which was primarily the unhoused population, people that were experiencing behavioral health issues. So I was working a lot with individuals that were, in the middle of it. And so I started changing my policing. I started working with one of the social workers in town, who became a really good friend. And we started riding along together and helping each other out. And then it kind of just grew from there. And in 19, I started pushing for more of a collaborative, as well as my friend was pushing for more of a collaborative. So we were going back and forth between our two agencies and the county to try to secure grants in order to start basically a co-responder unit. And as we did that, we started collaborating a lot more with other agencies. And then I was able to start our community service team, which deals primarily with the unhoused population. So with our unhoused population, it was the same thing where you had everybody was pulling one individual in 6 different directions, and I wanted to create a program that would allow everybody to get together and just try to go in one direction. So that's when we started our community service team. It was just myself, and then after a few months, I was able to get another officer. Let me throw in there, I had just been promoted as well, and I waited like 20 years to get promoted because I just didn't feel like I knew as much. And after I got promoted, a couple series of events, which we'll hit on with the post-crisis stuff and support. Um, with I created what was called a partnership. So I was able to contact the organizations that would be best suited, that were more boots on the ground, that would help people that were in crisis, experienced behavioral health issues, and that were unhoused. So we came up with about 40 different organizations, and we would invite the 40 different organizations every month to a meeting. And it was just called the partnership meeting. And we would meet together and we would discuss any issues, people we were looking for, obviously without, violating HIPAA. And I know how you guys are about HIPAA. But we were able, as a police department, to give as much information as possible because we weren't bound by that. So we ended up with a really good collaboration with individuals, and we're on our fourth year now of the partnership, which has been beneficial. And we consistently get anywhere between 25 to 40 people show up to the meeting. It is a big event for my team, which is now, my old team, which is now 4 people. So we work really well with different organizations. Now, when it comes to the collaboration with the co-responders, Emily hit it on the head. You're going to have, you can't be nice. My friend that works for CMH, she will butt heads with my captain. My captain will butt heads with her. I will butt heads with my captain to defend her. I will butt heads with her defending my captain. So it just kind of, you have to be headstrong, but also know your audience. And knowing that, like, when we first started it, it was really hard for officers to take somebody in, especially somebody they didn't know. But over time, the officers welcomed it. So just know that there is that ability to make it work, especially if both people are just open and upfront with each other. You have to respect each other's space and thoughts and boundaries. And once that's there, then it goes smooth. So got off track there. So when we have the partnership and the co-responder unit with our town, we deal with a lot. So I think with the 73,000, the last head count before I left was somewhere around 24 to 2,500 people that are experiencing behavioral health issues that are within the mental health. I'm not sure the proper terminology, but like in the world, I guess. But that are constantly being in contact with law enforcement or our social workers that are on the road. So we do a lot with our community. If I can get the next slide. So again, hitting on some of the post crisis. When it comes to the community, so whenever we have a shooting or we have a major incident, um, we try to get the Griffin Place 988 involved. Before it was just a Griffin Place. Now 988 is included with the organization. We try to get them involved. There's been several instances where I myself have contacted Griffin Place. We had a shooting in an apartment complex where a gentleman decided to shoot down at three of our officers. One of our officers returned fire. Um, there were several people in the apartment complex, and I had called the Griffin Place to come out and just canvass that apartment complex, canvass the surrounding area to see if anybody wanted to talk. And not in the sense of talking to, for evidentiary purposes, but for uh, just to understand what happened. We also sent out our pastors on patrol, which is a group of pastors. I think we have 12 pastors that engage with the community. Again, when it comes to violent crimes, they'll go out into the community and engage with individuals, whether it's people at the police line or going door to door. And that's the biggest thing is when we think about a crisis, we look at what is immediately in front of us, but we don't look at the outlying areas. So ensuring that we're talking to and communicating and thinking about everybody else that's been involved. Our CISM team concentrates on our officers, but the community CISM team concentrates on the community as a whole. Um, our peer support concentrates on our officers, but there's other peer support teams throughout our community that assist the community as a whole. Our pastors on patrol 988. So a lot of opportunity, a lot of resources that we have to ensure that people are not experiencing their own trauma due to something that they've witnessed or experienced. Um, with our officers, that's something I really take to heart. We do a very poor job of taking care of each other. Um, so for me, it's when I was a sergeant, anytime I would notice anybody that was struggling, maybe their reports were off, their investigations were off, their uh, the way they're communicating with people was off. I would try to address them and see what's going on. As in law enforcement, not only do we have to deal with the day-to-day traumas and the call volumes and all the stuff that we see throughout the day, but we also have we're humans. We have a personal life too, and we're not perfect. So um, when it comes to officers actually living their lives and then going to work, and then you have to, and it's no matter what, you have to put away your issues and continue forward. And like for me, um, I was promoted. Uh, I was a negotiator of a standoff that lasted 16 hours. It was just the wildest thing. The guy kept shooting at multiple of our officers, and we ended up taking the house down to eliminate the threat. 2 weeks later, I was involved in a shooting, um, and I was put on administrative leave. It was a clean shoot. It was um, we had an active shooter at the bus station. He'd shot 6 people, and when I came up, he was actively shooting at one of our officers. So for me, it was taking care of my officers, making sure that they were good, taking care of the person that was shot. So being medical first responders, it's going from pushing forward to then doing chest compressions. So I had 2 officers giving medical assistance to the person. We had 6 different people that were also shot. So we had multiple officers giving medical assistance to those individuals until the ambulance and the fire department were clear to come in. So for me, it was dealing with all of that, and then uh, it wasn't like it was more of a worried about my officers more than worried about myself, as well as I had felt a phantom, like I kept describing in my report, a phantom feeling, something hitting me in the side of my head, which later I found out was a round that hit a piece of concrete that was right next to my head that I was using for cover, and sprayed me. But then there was another round that went past my right side of my head that hit the sign behind me. So I didn't find out about the right hand side until 2 months ago when I talked to one of our crime lab guys that retired, and he was surprised that nobody told me about that one. But so as I was working through things, and a lot of pressure with my my new position, going into my new position as much relationships with people who honestly wanted nothing to do with the police. And I was very hell bent on making friends. One of the toughest ones was our uh, Western Michigan University's street medicine team. They were going out to the camps and like a little brother, just pulling that a shirt and saying, can I help? Can I help? And they would always shoo me away or just not talk to me at all. And after 8 months, that was like my biggest barrier was actually making that relationship work to a point now where uh, we communicate on a personal level, not just on a working level, but on a personal level where we check in on each other and everything. And I was happy to see that one of the doctors had last year when she had her baby to be there for that. So just working through all of that. And then as life goes on and things were doing pretty well and life was going pretty well, I got punched again with my ex-wife deciding she wanted a divorce. Fast forward through all that good stuff, found out she had a 10-year uh, uh, relationship with the person that she left me for. And I say all that because I share my life. I always share my life. But I say all that because, again, I would go into work and I would go in. I went in that morning that she sent me that email asking me for the divorce. And all I said to her was, if you don't love me, I can't change that. And I went right to work and I continued taking calls. I just continued dealing with issues, but I wasn't taking care of myself. So I was literally going out to the loading dock or somewhere private and just bawling my eyes out and then go to another call. And for some unknown reason, I don't know why, but 4 different times, this happened in August of 23, September of 23, 4 different times as I'm trying to work through my divorce. I had 3 jumpers and 1 suicidal that were all based on relationships. So I'm like telling them it's going to be fine. Life's going to get better. All this good stuff to try to stop them from jumping or trying to stop them for taking their own lives. Uh, and I just kept myself bottled up. And then my friends, a couple of the guys from the SWAT team and a couple of guys, my team, from my team, they just would tell me, you got to take care of yourself. And they kept looking out for me. And I kept everything private. And my partner who works for community mental health, she was really pivotal in my personal recovery. So when it comes to the post-crisis, law enforcement does a really piss poor job of taking care of each other. They do. Our command structure does a really bad job of checking in on officers, and I've really tried. Our team has really tried to change that model and actually check in on each other and make sure that we we take care of each other. When I was on admin leave, it was to a point where I told my old chief, which he's no longer with us, well, not working for the department, I'm sorry. I said, you know what would be nice is, I said, I don't care about myself, but it'd be nice if you just sent a disingenuine text once a week. Put it in your calendar as a reminder at 9 o'clock in the morning to send a disingenuine text to the officer, because that means so much to the guys when somebody in the upper ranks cares or acts like they care. Um, but we have to take care of our communities, and the officers have to take care of each other as well as the communities. And the unfortunate thing is we're the ones who are called prior to everybody else to make that initial contact. So if we have the same mindset, then we're able to help each other out. Um, and one of the questions I saw was, how do we get like the buy-in from like social work and social services to law enforcement? It's a slow thing. You're reaching out to somebody who cares, somebody that you know that's in like the CIT programs, somebody who's in a CISM team, in a peer support team, starting at that branch, and then working up to like a command officer. And it's even better if you can find somebody that's CIT, CISM, or peer support that's a command officer, because they'll be able to push. Um, and of course, one of the big things for us was there was a lot of grants that were kind of going hand in hand with law enforcement and social work. So that was another big thing, that was the CMH was able to have like a really good grasp, a good some talents dug into the police department, because they're like, hey, if we're holding your money and you're doing all this stuff. So I'm going to stop on and on and on. So uh, I'll wait for questions.